Hey, it's Jeremy from Jeremy.net. I am a comic book artist, writer, creator, and I share my creative process here with you online. If you'd like to support this channel, get 1 to 2 bonus live streams a month. You can go to patreon.com/GERIMI. It's patreon.com/Jeremy. I've also got comic book pages I post online that you can read before anyone else in the world. My current series, Morning Star, you can read all of the issues up there, page by page, for free. Tons of additional bonus content, all for subscribers. Go to patreon.com/Jeremy. If you would like to see the best of my social media posts, work in progress gifts that I post throughout the week, all delivered to your inbox in one place. Plus, a little bit of progress update in terms of what I'm working on, how my comics and projects are going to. I send out a monthly newsletter. That's newsletter.jeremy.net. You can go over and sign up there. And if you'd like to purchase physical copies of my comics, or let's say you prefer to read digitally, Amazon Kindle, Comixology, you can go to amazon.jeremy.net. They'll forward you to my Amazon author page. What's over there? My first graphic novel, Eye of the Gods. It is a psychological thriller about a man who is cursed with visions he cannot control. There is my current series, Morning Star. It's the story of Lucifer's fall from heaven, told as Western. This book contains issues 1 through 4 of an 8-issue series. Currently, I'm working on finishing up the last 4 issues, and that's what we're going to be working on today. So, with that, let us get into it. Ha! I see Amaris is in the chat. Hi, Amaris. Thanks for joining me. How you doing? Let's see here. So, last week, by the way, I need to leave myself a little post-it note. Remind me, whenever I mention the comic pages, I keep meaning to make a little animated GIF showing some of the pages of Morning Star so that people can see exactly what's inside of the book. Because when I hold up to the screen and flip through it, it just doesn't do it justice. So let me make a little note to self. Let's see. Let's see here. Oh, Mars says, good, making sketchbook. That is awesome. I don't spend enough time with my face buried in a sketchbook. I think that there's a lot that can be learned from keeping a sketchbook and drawing in it regularly. It's a great place to experiment. I know that a lot of artists share these very beautiful sketchbooks with finished looking renderings inside of them. That's not me. My sketchbook is a place for thinking, experimenting, for cataloging ideas, to kind of visual journaling. My sketchbook is kind of a train wreck, but it's a beautiful train wreck. It's a very messy, creative diary. So I probably should flip through one of my sketchbooks. I've actually, see, that's another Patreon perk. I've done a flip through of one of my older sketchbooks on Patreon. At some point, I will do something like that on here. A mini version for the public supporters and YouTube subscribers. I'm drinking some coffee. I had one of those where I was up late last night working on what we are looking at here. So I think I'd mentioned before that I was not happy with the Morning Star. Well, no, I was working on this cover last week. And this image here on the right, I've got 2 here, A and B. So B is what I was working on last night. So I sort of redid a new cover sketch. I was a lot happier with this compared to the cover sketch of the original version of Morning Star. However, my buddy Carl Altstetter and I were on FaceTime, and we were just jamming, working on our projects together and just talking. And he asked to have a look at the original cover that I did, and I showed that to him. And even though I explained to him that the problem was that I felt like the contrast in terms of the features was really off compared to the environment, that he still looked at the original cover. And what's on the left, A, is the face, the head from the original cover, and the gun from the original cover. And then he suggested duplicating and mirroring the arm and making it so he's got like a two-gun kind of a Chow Yun-Fat thing going on. And I actually, at first I was very hesitant because I'm stubborn. But I think, as I mentioned to you before, like, Carl is the man who got me to eventually flip my pages. And we still joke about it to this day, because I'll tell him, it's like, look, it took 2 years of hounding, but you eventually got me to do it. So the fact that, within one jam session of working on stuff, he made a suggestion. I said, well, let me humor him. And I dropped the head on there. And it's like, all right, let me flip and mirror it so it's got the two guns. And then it was kind of off to because as you can see in this original composition, Lucifer is a little bit more to the left. If he's got the two guns on there, he needs to be more centered. So you actually may not be able to tell. But the on version A that's here on the screen, I moved Lucifer more into the center, which is why the wings just cut off. So I'm gonna have to go in and fill that out. But by the time we were done with our conversation and I made these little adjustments, I was like, I think he's right. I hate it when he's right. But he's right. No, I don't hate it when he's right. That's one of the things I'm trying to get better at. I think all of you can relate to being too stubborn to take good advice. And I would be a liar if I didn't say that I suffer from that as well. For as much advice as I give, I am horrible at taking it. I really am. It's something that I'm conscious of. And I try to work on it. I see Trevor's in the chat. Skull. Amaris also says I put my comic roughs in my sketchbooks. That's actually really cool. To just have a sketchbook full of just your roughs and thumbnails. There's a comic creator, Declan Shelby, who I'm signed up for his newsletter. He worked on Moon Knight for DC a while back. He's got a series that he wrote and drew for a Hulk series for Marvel right now called Flatline. He's done tons of covers for Marvels over the year, tons of runs on different series. Anyway, I really love his art, and I love his newsletter because he specifically shows a lot of his process work. And I show so much process work because I love process work. So, his newsletter was like made for me. And he, at one point, shared like all of his thumbnails for the Hulk story he recently did. And it's called Hulk Flatline, by the way. It's out. I don't know him personally, but I'm shilling for it because I love his content. So definitely go check that out. It should be in stores now. I think it's a 48-page one-shot. Anyway, I loved, I would love it if he just published a book of just his thumbnails. Like, I know he's planning to do he has actually a Kickstarter for the process edition for a new series he's doing, but I don't know if it's, I don't think he did the layouts for all of that. But that said, I just love looking at his thumbnails in general. Like, his thumbnails remind me a lot of Alex Toth. I don't know why I went out in the thumbnail jag, but just process stuff. Anyway, now I'm well, hell, I put this A or B up here just because I've kind of decided that I'm going to go with A. Although last night when I finished, before I went to bed, I started posting the cover on social media with I posted what I just showed you here, the A and B, to see what friend of mine, Sam, ex-coworker from a different trick company used to work at, what with B. With the C, I can't win here. I knew it was gonna be one of those things where see, I don't know why. Usually when people have a tough choice, they will kind of share online and go A or B, and then they get a consensus. I am almost positive that I'm going to look at all these comments and it's going to be split 50-50. Because that's just what I end up with. I don't know. Well, I can tell you why. Generally, I don't ask people's opinions unless I'm generally having trouble with something, I don't usually ask just out of comfort or wanting the social encouragement. I just kind of like I just kind of like doing my, I like just doing what I want to do, which is again not necessarily a great habit. Sometimes it is really good to get feedback from people. But let's see here. Yeah. So far, the response on social media seems to be split. So I don't know. I mean, I've kind of committed now to version A, but let's see here. Twitter likes version A. I mean, not Twitter, Instagram. It's Instagram. A wins almost hands down. Yeah, like all the other places, I posted it on Twitter. I posted it on LinkedIn. I posted it on a few other social media. But yes, there's a couple of people who voted for B on Instagram, but it looks like A is the overwhelming winner. Of course, Carl liked A. My friends John and Jess, they have a Jess voted 2 votes for A because she's voting for her husband. All right. It looks like A it is. So much for split votes. Okay. So what's going on here is I've sort of like chop suey this thing together, just kind of like cut and paste from the previous cover in terms of like I've got the face and gun on one arm, and I've got separate gun on another layer. Because this version that's below, that's the main figure, kind of has what I want it to be visually. I made a duplicate of just the head so I can cut out everything except for the face and hat. I think I'm even going to keep the hair from the new version because for some reason I didn't change that much in terms of Lucifer's dreadlocks, but I like how his dreads look better in the new version. So I'm gonna cut out everything except for the hat. And I wanted to do this on a separate layer because I'm going to go in and I'm going to repaint the tones in his face. Because one of the things I also did not like about this cover was that you could no longer really tell that Lucifer was black. And I do feel like I have definitely seen the difference when I'm at conventions selling to people, having a comic book that has a black character on a cover, particularly a non-superhero comic, because people of color are not necessarily represented as much in mainstream comics, I think, as people of color would like. But definitely outside of superheroes, just in comics in general, it's nice to see more faces, different faces, whether it be Asian, Latinx, whatever the culture, it's nice to see more different types of faces. But especially, just seeing them outside of the superhero genre. And so I made it a point when I did the cover for the first volume that it was almost like a portrait is kind of what I was going for. It was like a portrait of a character with a gun standing in front of a pentagram, a burning pentagram, but still, and that isn't to say that I'm trying to only make comics for Black audiences, because obviously Black Panther would not have been as successful as it was if only Black people went to see it. I think the message sometimes gets really messed up when people talk about wanting to see more diverse characters and people of different ethnicities, that some people might construe that as saying we want to make more content that's only for people of color. And I think the answer is we want to see mainstream stories for everybody, that feature people of color. I think that's the broader message. And you know, this isn't a story. You know, my version of Morningstar, you know, features a lot of people of color. It is not a story about race. It isn't. It's a supernatural horror western with deep biblical overtones, which again, well, I would say philosophical overtones because I'm not a particularly religious person. I think that the tone that I take with it is more of a philosophical exploration than it is a story about religion writ large. But I think it's a story that definitely, I mean, from enough of the people that I've sold it to at conventions, I definitely do feel. I mean, I've seen people of all different races and ethnicities and genders and gender orientations that have picked up the book, checked it out, enjoyed it. And that is my goal. So I'm very proud of that. I may end up redrawing the neck back into this piece. You know, I don't think that I draw necessarily the best ears in the world, but I do think the ears that I drew. Well, actually, you know what? I don't know if you can even really see Lucifer's ears in the new version that I drew, but that might be intentional, in the sense that I think that ears can be challenging to draw because detail draws the eyes, and ears have these little tiny details. And for me, often I'm trying to capture the quote unquote feel of the whole ear. But in that process, if I put a bunch of detail into it, the ear becomes distracting. And what you want, it's a fine balance between putting just enough detail into the ear that it reads as an ear and not just a donut slapped on the side of someone's head, but not putting so much detail in there that it distracts from the eye. It jumps out, and you're like, why is this ear so prominent? It's like, because you rendered the thing like it's the Mona Lisa. Hey, it's Byron. Byron in the chat. He says, it's been a while since I've managed to catch this live. How's it going? It is going well. I'm working on the cover for the final issue of Morningstar. You know, and I wanted to thank you again. Byron left a really thoughtful, long comment on the video I had about what are we afraid of artistically. Actually, I think it was that one. It might have been the video afterwards. My brain is still a little bit foggy this morning. But the point is we talked a lot about, or you talked to me a lot about style and figuring out what we want to do creatively. And as much as I try to give everyone else encouraging words, it's really nice to have encouraging thought, to receive them from others. And you, Byron, particularly. Trevor's always got some thoughtful, encouraging words, but they also come loaded with some ball busting. Trevor says, I don't think readers care so much what race is as long as it's organic and consistent. I dig the story, and I don't think there's anyone paler than me. I just want heroes and villains with great stories. Yes, agreed. Thank you. Yeah, you know, I mean, it's a funny thing because definitely we live in a society where people don't necessarily talk about these kind of issues because it's really easy for people to get offended or be overly sensitive. I shouldn't even necessarily say overly sensitive, but, you know, race and ethnicity can be a sensitive topic. And in an effort to not offend people, sometimes we just don't talk about stuff at all. And I don't think that's healthy either. So it's tough to find that balance between having an open dialogue and, you know, having an open dialogue versus just saying, well, I don't want anyone to be offended, so we're just not going to talk about this at all. And I think that the latter tends to be what happens. You know, I may even go farther and see. Here's the thing: I like the skin tones of the face that I have there, but I don't like the face. I feel like the nose is off. You know, it's just not working for me. But I think what I might do, I'm gonna even cut this down even smaller, and I'm gonna cut out the hat because now that I look at this, well, I don't know. Can I just drop? I guess because I don't want to erase the hat that I have on there, but that might be what's necessary. And this is one of the advantages of working digital. The fact that I had a whole different painting and now I can just take pieces from a different digital painting and just throw them on here. And I know that this is not to Trevor, I'm definitely not trying to talk you into digital. This is just one of those things where I was pretty far along in, like, if I turn off this layer, other than the fact that I haven't painted in like the let me see here, just the bottom layer. So the background, hang on, background color. Yeah, so this is all going to be yellow with fire around it. But beyond that, just trying to fit, like, this painting, I feel like I got pretty far along in before I had the conversation with my buddy Carl about changing the composition. And the fact that I could go into my previous versions and just copy out the elements from that painting, drop them in here, and then try to rework them into this. I'm like, yeah, it would be starting from scratch with traditional. So I do feel like, it is nice to have this kind of flexibility and be able to being able sorry. Trevor said the ball busting is an add-on feature. Thank you, brother. Oh, Byron says, I'm glad you were able to help. You humble me. Trevor says, I'm just a Luddite who prefers having physical art. Don't adopt my plan or anything. I'm not the only or even the best role model. Well, it's funny because in moving forward and wanting to experiment with making my next comic book digitally, one of the things that I'm going to have to do is make a general practice of doing ink sketches like on a regular basis, because I don't want to lose the skill I've built up in terms of inking traditional art. It took me years to get. I mean, this whole Western was the first time I've been able to ink with a brush with any level of success, and it's taken me, I guess, basically 10 years to get to the point where I am now. And I don't want to give that up just because I'm working in a different workflow. And it might sound nuts to say, oh, well, if you're going digital, just go digital. But I think that we have to stay nimble in this world and be able to adapt, try different things, use different skills. The point is I don't want my traditional skills I've built up, I don't want those to atrophy. I don't want to go digital at the expense of having those skills atrophy. So I'm going to make sure that I continue to practice working traditionally. All right. Then the other thing I do a lot, this may already look small to you because you're looking at it on the screen, but I try to zoom out and really make sure that things are in proportion. Because when I zoom in, it still looks like it's about right, but it also looks like this head could be a little bit smaller. That's why I'm just futzing around. I'm shifting this over and then back and then over and then back. I'm comparing the size because it looks right here like the head is a little bit smaller, and the head that's on there looks like it's appropriately proportioned to Lucifer's face. And then I come back and I shrink it down, and then it looks too small, the one that I have here. So I keep going back and forth, back and forth. And I guess this is the digital equivalent of noodling with a piece. Let's see here. Byron says digital art is quite convenient like that, but man, I do miss the feel of paper. Though I will say, as someone who hates coloring, at least digital makes that process far easier for me. Trevor says I do ink layout and sketches because it forces me to commit the line, no redo. Makes committed drawing when you go back to paper. Oh, makes committed drawing when you go back to paper. Yes. No, I completely agree. Like that's the whole reason why I was doing my thumbnails with a brush, is because, in the process where I do all my thumbnails, then all my layouts, then all of my inking, it might be a few months of me doing layouts before I get back to the ink stage. So doing my thumbnails with a brush at least was a chance to keep my brush limber. And I kind of get a little bit of that when I sketch with a brush pen, but it's still not quite the same. All right, so what I'm gonna do here is I have a layer turned off that just has a version of this that's cut out with that includes Lucifer's hair, and I'm gonna get rid of that, and then I'm gonna duplicate this head that I have here, and I'm gonna cut out just the hat and have just a space. And I guess what I'm trying to see is find the least amount, or try to find a way that I can really cut where I can drop in the simplest amount of work. Because there's going to be patchwork and redrawing no matter what. And on one hand, I may be fooling myself by trying to find a way to clip out as little as possible when I could just sit down and say, all right, let me just figure out what I need to redraw and redraw it. But it is possible that I can minimize the amount that I need to redraw. And that's what I'm trying to do. Although this face was drawn at a much lower resolution. So, I mean, yes, I'm going to be repainting it because I want to recolor it all together. But it's also, and see, that's the ear. I like that ear a lot better than the ear I drew. But that ear would look weird on this head because this head is at more of a 3/4, whereas this head is a straight on. So I may have to lose that ear. Not a big loss. Just something I'm thinking about. So now if I've got this, and let me turn that back on. And then let's see here. Let's duplicate this. All right, now things get a little janky here because I have to turn this back on and cut out really everything but the arm. And I've got all these other layers on top. see. Yeah, at this point, I'm doing more sort of a patchwork adjustment than it is me actually actively drawing here. So not as exciting as the normal process where I'm just going away at, chipping away at a piece. But this is probably the easiest way for me to figure out what I need to keep and lose. And at this point, all I really need is Lucifer's hand. And it's a shame to a certain degree because I think I drew a really good gun in the early version. But I also think I drew, even though it's just the silhouette of the gun, if I turn on my sketch layer, and this was something that I showed, again, I showed my buddy Carl. Right now I have the sketch set at like 13% opacity because I just wanted it low. I just wanted enough that I could follow what I was doing. Although when I turn the line work all the way up, I'm wondering if I'm doing myself harm by trying to give my work a more painted, pardon me. I wonder if I'm trying to give myself, if I'm doing myself harm by trying to give myself a more painted look and feel. Because when I throw this line art back on there, I actually, whoops. Let's turn that back off. I actually really like the way the line art just makes this pop. And I'm wondering if I would be better served in the future by simply keeping the line art and cleaning it up and coloring it. And in fact, well, I mean, that's kind of what I did by dropping the low opacity and then just making it a darker version of what's already there. But for a goof, I mean, obviously I'm changing the face and the other arm and the guns and all that, adding the other arm. But for a goof, I am going to duplicate this and I'm going to try to tint the color of this sketch. And again, this is the thing that I feel, it's this ability to experiment with a piece that's already in progress, to tweak and refine as you go. And that's the thing that I have not done much of. I tend to be very process oriented, and once the train starts moving, I have to follow that train all the way to the end. And if I get to a point where something is wrong, I need to fix it, it's like, all right, I've got to go all the way back to my thumbnail stage to fix this. Or I need to go, whatever it is, I need to step back. If I have a problem with the inks, is it like, all right, well, do I need to go back to the layout and fix that? No, the composition's off. So I need to go back to the thumbnail stage and redo the thumbnails for that particular panel or page. Whereas with this, it's that cut and paste. So I'm going to turn the saturation to the max and turn up the brightness. And then I'm going to try and change this to a weird color. Let's see. I don't want it to go all the way to white. I want it to, because this just looks gray. When I want, let's see what happens if I bring it down. So that's the thing. This doesn't seem to work like the hue saturation in Photoshop, because really what I want to do is recolor the line art. And this is just letting me make it, I think that it would be fine if I were if this line art already had a color to it, then it would be fine. It would just shift the hue to whatever that color is. But because it started out black and white and there is no hue information, there's nothing for it to shift to. And normally when you're doing that in Photoshop, you just check the recolor box and then it lets you recolor it. And I'm not sure what that option is in Procreate. And I forget how to cancel a transformation when you're in the middle of it and you don't like it. So I'm just going to commit and then undo. I'm still learning my way through Procreate. And instead, let's try color balance and see if that does what I'm looking for. I'm sure that those of you who are very skilled at Procreate are just in there screaming at me like, "What are you doing? Just do A, B, and C." Um, yeah, all right, this seems to work. So I can shift this towards red, or I can shift this to, well, the cyan doesn't seem to be doing much. Let me leave this in the middle. Actually, you know what? Let's move this to cyan, then move this to blue. Just because I want to see what happens if I take a reddish piece and move all of the line art to a cooler color. And to be honest, now that I did this, I could just jump back over to the hue saturation. It's frustrating to not be able to tint it exactly what I want from one menu, one tool. But that said, I could make it happen. And that's the most important thing for me is I tend to be somebody who, if I look at a tool and it can't do what I want, then I say, all right, well, what happens if I combine this tool with that tool with this other tool? And I try to just find a way to make stuff happen. So let's see what happens if I move this back over now. Instead of that, yeah, to a little bit more of a magenta, more of a purpley color. Oh, see what happens if I move this to the green. No, that just makes it black again. Well, I'll tell you, it looks nice, even though it just sort of blends in when I shift this so that the line art is like just a dark red. But when I shift it so that it's kind of purple, it pops a little bit more. Like the line art is a little bit cooler than the figure work. Yeah, and I mean, obviously, like I said, I'm not even gonna the hands and the head are gonna disappear from it. I'm not even gonna be using this sketch in the final. But I wanted to look at this because I'm always thinking not just about the current piece that I'm working on. In the process of experimenting with every phase, whether it's pencil, ink, thumbnails, penciling, inking, writing, I'm always thinking whenever I start dabbling and experimenting, I'm experimenting because I'm thinking about, what do I want to try on the next thing that I make? And I don't know how well you could see this on your screen, particularly if you're watching on a phone or something. So I'm just going to zoom in a little bit so you can see more of the line art. Yeah, I don't know how many people are watching on tablets versus desktop monitors. But I just realized because I look up at my laptop and from sitting just like a foot and a half away, when I was zoomed out, you can't really see anything. So this is the piece with the sketch turned on and the line art tinted versus no sketch versus the sketch in black. Hang on, I can leave that open, but just scoot this over. Well, over. There we go. So yeah. So I'm just thinking about the fact that even though I've been going for a more digital, if I turn the sketch off, this is what I've been aiming for, is a digital, like a painted feel. It's almost like me trying to do Limedecker digitally, where I'm dropping out the line art and I'm focusing more on color and texture. And I'm wondering if that just isn't my style and that I still need some sort of line art, whether it is, black line art or tinted line art, which the tinted line art, this feels like the way a lot of my work has done in the past. I mean, that's what I've done in the past. Yeah, I think it'll be weird because it'll almost be like digitally inking again, but I think I may knock this piece into shape and then come back in and clean up the digital sketch some more. And just basically put line art over the thing. I mean, plus you have to remember that a lot of the detail, it's not going to be obliterated, but there's going to be fire coming up around all over this thing. Um, all right, let's get back to what I was doing, which was placing the face. All right. So I guess now it's just a matter of getting on with it. Let me go back to my flat layer, and hang on, I have to turn off my alpha lock because I'm going to finish off the wings. For those of you not alpha lock or not Procreate savvy for digital, those not digital art savvy, alpha lock just locks the transparent pixel, so I can only paint on things that have already been painted, and it leaves all of the white space. The white space is locked. The transparent space is locked, rather. Um, so I can kind of cheat use a layer as flats. And yes, I probably should give Clip Studio Paint another shot because I know a lot of people that when it comes to actually doing line art, that Clip Studio Paint is great for Procreate. Um, a lot of people love it. I tried it a couple of times and didn't like the interface, but I was also trying it on the desktop. As far as I know, Clip Studio Paint has not gone subscription, has it? Um, I'm just asking in case anyone else watching is a user. I can look that up later. It's not like it's information that I desperately need to know. Um, and to be honest, also another reason why I am really trying to stick with just Procreate is because I have a bad habit of picking up a new application or a new tool every couple of years instead of really becoming a master at just one tool. Like for instance, Photoshop and Illustrator, at this point, I've been using them for my day job for so many years that I can make them do whatever I need them to do. You know, I have a workflow with them. I have them pretty well trained. But I mean that workflow is more graphic design related. It's not really comic related. Although I would have been lettering my comics in Illustrator for quite a number of years before I switched over to Affinity Design. So, but picking up another app is just another thing for me to go down the rabbit hole of learning how to use. For instance, when I switched over to Procreate, I spent before I got into doing layouts digitally. I spent probably 2 or 3 months watching tutorials and making like 4 or 5 experimental digital paintings. Um, and even when I say digital paintings, they were still things that were drawn in ink and then scanned in. So it's like I just colored them. But with that habit that I continue to have of just learning new stuff for the sake of learning it as opposed to working just developing a workflow and sticking with it. That's still a habit that I am working on breaking. Okay, let me turn these other things off. Now I remember. I was in the process of deleting everything but the gun. So I was going to have one hand, the other hand, and the gun. You know what? This is stupid. If I want to go back and repaint them, I really could just go back to yeah. Why do all that cutting? Delete, delete. So here's what I have before masked. Here's the hand that I duplicated. I'm just going to duplicate that again. Drag this back over. Flip it. Rotate it. Scale it. I'm just shimmying it around to see if it's close to what I want. Oh, wait, because it's got the flame around it. That's what I want. I want that flame that's surrounding it. I don't think that flame is painted very well. I can live without it. Can I? Well, let's see. First, let me make sure I have the gun pointed in the direction I want. And it looks pretty much like it is. Although now that I'm looking at it, I feel like maybe I should have this first wrist turned outward just a little bit more. Like that. And now, if I turn off these layers, put the face back on. Because his chest is turned away, I made the left hand and left gun a little bit smaller than the right one. Take this and turn it a little bit more. Move it away a little bit. Then, even though I really like the flame that's surrounding him, I can always come back in and add that on top. So if I take this first one, bring this in a little bit more. Do I want to raise it up or down? Do that. And I will tell you another thing that I miss about working desktop. So not digital, but just working desktop versus working on a tablet is being able to move things with arrows. Let me see if I've got the move tool. I mean, I can still move without having my finger directly on the object. But I like the idea that right now what I'm doing is I have my finger off to the side and I don't have my finger right on top of the object moving it. But I like being able to use the arrow keys to move things incrementally as opposed to moving them with my hand. Excuse me. It's just that little extra layer of precision that I like. All right. Yeah, I think that actually works for me. And so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back in and repaint these arms into the original composition. Or actually, I guess I'll just, and seeing as how they're mirrored, I suppose I really could just paint it once and then flip it and use the exact same arm. And I'm very tempted to do that. But what I'm going to do first is I'm going to duplicate my flat layer. And in fact, let me get rid of, I'm just going through here and getting rid of some layers that I don't need. I'm not sure what my my max layers for a file this size is. It might be like 20. And I'm not even doing this because I'm bumping up on the cap. It's more simply to make it easier for me to work. I like having as few layers in a file as possible. Hang on. I have to move away from the screen for a second and blow my nose because allergies are kicking up. It's super windy out right now. And I see some comments in the chat. I will come back and address those in a moment. Wow, It's already 50 minutes. This time has gone by quick. I'll tell you what. I'm kind of getting in a groove here, and I haven't even gotten into painting yet. Just this kind of fixing and cutting and pasting. I'm enjoying that. I think we're gonna go long today. Let's go like 90 minutes. We'll go in an extra half hour, just because I feel like it. And again, if you guys have stuff to do, catch the rest on the replay. But for anyone who wants to stick around, we'll go an extra half hour. I'm just feeling it today. Let's see here. Let me go back up now to the comments. So Byron says, I do feel as though the colored line art makes the edges feel more crisp and refined, but I personally always preferred line art over painterly styles personally. I see Comic Boy in the chat. Hello, sir. Hello to you. Thank you for joining us. Let's see here. Byron says it's still a one-time purchase as of right now. That's Clip Studio Paint. And Trevor's agreed. He says, yes, Clip Studio is still available to own, like that damned abomination Photoshop. Byron also says, PS is just not that good anymore for drawing, to be honest. Far better drawing applications, and many of them are free, like Krita. I have never used Krita. I have heard it mentioned here and there favorably, but I haven't given it a shot yet. For the same reasons I think I've mentioned before, it's just learning yet another tool. Then again, I mean, if it's free, what do I have to lose? So I think that's something I need to think about, is whether I really want to invest in learning yet another workflow, either Krita or Clip Studio Paint. I see Martin's in the chat. Hey, hey, hey. Thank you for joining us. Byron says the extended stream. Nice. All right. Good. Let me continue here. So I think the first thing that I am going to do, now that I've cleaned up the layers a little bit, and I did at least have the common sense to separate from my figures, I kept the wings separate. Although I realize now I have drawn these little additions to the wings on a different layer. Oh, I drew those on the flat layer. But what I can do is I can go back up to this layer. I can lasso. I can cut, paste. So now this gives me this part on a separate selection in the same position. And I can just drag this down one layer. Oops, I don't want to group it. I can just drag this down. I grouped it again. Getting used to some of these commands. I don't want stuff grouped, I just want them. All right, I just want them on the same layer. So now I've got, okay, all this is on the same layer, and now I just pinch them together, and now the wings are all on one layer again. Normally this flat layer, I keep it alpha lock so I don't mess it up. But as you can see, I turned the alpha lock off when I was tweaking it, and I did what I didn't want to do, which started painting on it. I'm going to duplicate this because that's what I do. Normally, I will just leave extra versions in. Like you saw, I had all these extra layers that I was going through deleting. Those were when I was going step by step through working through the different iterations of the piece. I would just duplicate a part of a layer, mess with it a little bit, see if it worked, and then turn it on and off as I did different iterations. So then I just keep working like that, and every couple of hours, if I see stuff building up, I'll just get rid of layers that I realize once I've committed to a decision, I don't need that layer anymore, and I'll toss it. So now I'm going to come in here and I'm going to do two things. Again, this is another layer that I'm not going to need later. But one, I'm going to lasso the face so I can repaint with these exact tones the new face. And I'm going to, oh wait, I cut and paste when I just wanted to copy and paste. Well, I mean, shit. If I'm gonna end up, no, because I want to keep the hair. That's why I don't want to do all of that. Undo. It's just copy. And now I can move this up here. Although what's weird is, I don't know if you guys are seeing this, but for me, when I look at these two side by side, the copy looks slightly darker to me. And I don't know why, but that bothers me. So my whole point is I'm trying to adjust colors here. Yeah, I don't know why this would be darker because I don't have another layer above it that is manipulating the colors. Yeah, this looks redder than it should be. And the problem is that if I just cut and paste directly, Well, let's see what happens. This is kind of stupid. Now I'm just because it's not doing what I want it to. I am going to undo. Actually, let's just do this. Delete that. Copy all. Move up to the top layer. Paste. See, it shifted red. There's something that's making this shift red. I don't know what's going on there, but there's something making the. Oh wait, is it? No, because my layer mode is normal. There's no reason why the copy merged version should be shifting red. There's absolutely no reason. So it's not my imagination. I mean, you guys are seeing this, right? This is the copy pasted version. That's the original version. I mean, the opacity is set to max, unless the maybe my flat layer is not at 100% opacity. Let me double check that. Nope. This one is 100% opaque. So it's 100% opaque, set on normal, and a copy of the thing is shifting red. And that's irritating because what I wanted to do was use this original version to recolor. I just want to have it to the side so I can kind of color pick while I'm repainting. This makes no sense to me. Let's see here. Apologize for the sniffling. Yeah, the allergies. Let's see here. Byron says I use Krita personally, and I can definitely recommend it. But I also say stick with your workflow if it's currently working for you. Otherwise, you'll slow yourself down learning something new. Very true. Trevor says off with his head. Off with his head, it shifted red. Hey, it rhymed. The bard runs deep within you. And Trevor asks, are you seeing a different layer? And that's what I was thinking. I'm looking through here to see if there's another layer I have on that has some sort of color adjustment, or it's set on a low opacity, or set on a different blend mode. But no, the only other thing in here is I have a black and white layer on top, but that layer is turned off. So the only layer that is, there's no layers that are visible above the flat. There are layers above it, but they're all invisible. And the only one on it that might have any, the only one that might have any color effect is there's a layer that has the branding for the book, and that's it on multiply. Other than that, nothing else. So I have no idea why this is recoloring. But it's irritating to me. But I'll tell you what I will do instead, because I'm stubborn and I refuse to be defeated. I am just going to take a screenshot and then drop the screenshot in Procreate. Come back in here. So now the only layer in, wait, no, I'm still in the file. All right, let me go back out to the gallery. It's stupid to have to do all of this runaround because I'm getting a weird color shift. But it's also something that I'm going to have to look up later. So within this just has the screenshot in this file. And I can go in here and I can just select, add to that a little bit more, make sure I get the ear. Select this, copy, and then I can go back to my file, and I should paste this in and have everything that I wanted before. I mean, yeah, I'm a little irritated having to make that kind of like run around, or work around rather. Oh, and of course it's smaller now. You know what? It's still doing it. The copy pasted version, it's shifting red. Son of a bitch. I don't know what's happening. There was absolutely something weird going on. All right, well, I'm gonna go nuts if I keep sitting here messing with that. I'm just gonna repaint it and try to shift it back to the values that I want. I was gonna use the color picker as I repainted the face, but it's looking pretty much like as I do that, I'm going to, if I were to use the color picker, I'm guessing it would probably pick the wrong colors. It would probably pick the red shifted colors. So mentioning my sniffles, Trevor said another Benadryl stream. But Amar is in the chat. How you doing, Amar? Says happy Sunday to everybody. Amar, we're going a little bit long today. I'm going to go till probably for another half hour. Let me see here. I am just checking. Okay. Anyway. After all that messing, trying to get this copy color thing right, I don't even remember what I was in the middle of doing. I think that I was in the middle of repainting the face. But before I do that, I am going to okay, I get what I'm doing here. What I am doing is I am cutting out the pieces that I'm going to repaint and just leaving them in the file so I can kind of see what I'm doing. I'm taking the pieces of the sketch that I like the way they're drawn, and I am selecting them and I'm keep moving them to the side next to the areas that I'm going to repaint so I can reference these in the repaint. And let me remove from the selection a little bit because I actually, there we go. Now, make sure I have the right layer selected. Cut and paste. Move this down here. Let's see how this looks with this turned back on. I think what I really want is turn this back on. And now deselect, reselect. I'm going to try and grab just what I need. Grab that. Turn this off so I can see what I've selected. And now cut and paste. And move this down here. Somehow I managed to leave a tiny bit. I'm just going to erase that. I think this is less exciting than the process of watching me make marks when I'm inking or drawing traditionally. But it is useful to have this process. Let me turn my framing back on. So I'm wondering if I should move the gun arm a little bit to the right. Nah, I'll leave it where it's at. And in fact, now I am thinking about moving the other arm back over closer. But this means that I am going to have to make the way that the coat is kind of flared open, I'm going to have to squeeze that in and have it wrap around. I don't have to, but I mean, visually, I'm looking at this and I'm like, well, if his arm is coming over like that, you're not going to see the inside of the coat where it, or I could just have it, I can mask it so that the arm is still cutting through, but you know what? It's fabric. It's still going to bend some because his arm is crossing over the arm that's on his right. His right arm is crossing because it's farther away from you and it's crossing over the coat. So it's still where the part where it's open is still going to pull in and get compressed by because I've kind of got so that like the coat is sort of open. You can see the lapels if I turn this off, in the original, when he just had one arm down, you can see the lapels. You're looking at the lapels. You're looking at the inside of the coat open. Now that I'm adding this extra arm in here, it's not just a matter of, oh, cutting off the arm where the lapels are. The lapels are going to get pulled in because the arm is over it because it's fabric. So I'm going to have to redraw that part. Let's see here. Trevor says Amar is here. He's a digit dude. He might be able to help. And Amar says, looks like you have a duotone, tritone pop art thing going on here with the cover. Yeah, well, it comes down to me trying to push the contrast. I mean, it gets even brighter when I put here, I've got a little thumbnail in this file. If I turn off this and that. I tried to work out a color scheme that had better contrast. Like if I flip this, I've got a black and white layer on top. And the main thing is I wanted something that had bright colors but had way more contrast. Because as you can see, the face and the two arms that are on the larger figure now are from the original cover that I drew and I wasn't happy with. I had been working on this months ago and I decided to set it aside and just do the gray tones for the issue and come back to it. When I came back to it, I realized the problem was even though I've got a character surrounded in fire, so in theory, it's a high key image. Everything is on the brighter end of the spectrum. There just wasn't enough contrast. So what I decided to do was rework it so that the areas of red, I picked really warm colors so that it reads as he's surrounded by fire, but they're on the darker end of the warm spectrum. So those reds are what's giving me enough contrast that when you look at it just in black and white, on a value level, it reads. It reads as a strong silhouette of dark against light. That's the little thumbnail that I've got up in the corner. And that was what I wanted to fix. As opposed to before, I just tried to make the entire thing feel like it was on fire. And I just got a very bright but muddy gray. And I think even if when I go back to this black and white, if you look at the two hands in the large figure and the face, it all is just sort of gray compared to the blacks and lights on the rest of the figure. So the big fix here was me trying to make value changes, and I had changed the pose as well. But now I'm bringing in elements from the previous pose. So it's becoming a little bit of a mixed surgery here. But the thing, Amar says the values being washed out for the face and arms were intentional then. They were intentional at the time I made it, but I was not happy with it. I didn't really know what it was that was bothering me, and now that I've come back to it, here, if I turn this face off, you can see here's a new face that I drew. And I'm going to switch this to black and white. This face has contrast. I feel like that face reads a lot better. But, I was talking with a friend of mine last night, and he really liked the composition of it, of him moving. Like, if I just turn all of this off, this is what I was working on last night when I was on the phone with a buddy of mine. So this was my new composition. Just one hand. I mean, it's always been one hand before. It was just one hand and him looking. It's more of a down shot, an up shot, looking up at Lucifer as he's pointing off of camera as opposed to more at the viewer. And a friend of mine, my buddy Carl Altstetter, he and I were talking, and he wanted to look at the old cover, and he said, "All right, what about this?" And he had the idea of bringing back in the pose of the original cover, the washed out cover, and then putting two guns in there. So he's got like this kind of a Chow Yun Fat, two guns at the viewer type look. And I hemmed and hawed for a little bit, and then I was like, you know what? That works. I'm on board. Yeah. So now now what I'm doing is I'm just painting. I've cut and paste the elements from the original, the one that wasn't working, into this. And now I'm just going through and recoloring them with the value range of the new sketch. And this is where I was complaining to this is where you came into the middle of me complaining because I cut and pasted the head from this sketch. I was going to have this next to the new head and just repaint. I was going to just eye drop the values as I painted it. But as you can see, it's shifting red. Like if you look at this head, this copy and pasted head, it's shifting red in comparison to the other one. And there's no other layers above this and between this layer and the, well, I mean, yeah, I've made a few now, but my point being is if I turned off everything but my my flat layer here, so I've got just the flat layer, every other layer above this is turned off. So there's no other layers that have any blending modes. But if I go through here and I copy all and paste, it's shifting red. See if here it is, original, copy paste. So this is like a merged copy paste that's on here. And I checked, the blending mode is normal and the opacity is 100%. The file that I copied from, the blend mode is normal and the opacity is 100%. So I don't know, and there's nothing between these two layers. So I don't know why it is shifting red when I do this. But the whole point of me making the copy and paste is so I can eye drop the values correctly, and I'm not going to get the correct values because the thing that I was going to use for reference is shifting red. And I was been sitting here before you came on trying to fix it and figure out what's going on, and it was driving me nuts. And I even just took a screenshot, but the screenshot is shifting red. So who knows? This might not even be Procreate's fault. This might be an iPad problem. Let me go over to my photos. Let me see here. Oh, I didn't save the photo. These are some of the work in progress shots I was doing that I save as I work so I can make animated GIFs from it. But let's see what happens if I save this screenshot. And go over to my photos. Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at this and it doesn't look like it's shifting red. But then when I bring this file in to Procreate, it looks like it's shifting red. Go back here. Yeah, it's hard for me to tell without having the two side by side, but I think, yeah, maybe it's shifting red in the photo, maybe it's not. But all I know is when I bring it back into Procreate, it's shifting red. Let's see. Amar says, it seems as if this is a gray tone with color masks. That should not happen. Is the color mode the same and or the blending modes from the other file? Well, I don't know if you're talking about the color elements that I dropped in, and I believe that they should be, but even if they're not the same blending mode, the color file, these elements that I dropped in are not the thing that I'm talking about, because everything that's on the screen right now, this figure, this face, these wings were all drawn in this color mode. And all I was trying to do was duplicate things that are within this same color space. And the thing I was duplicating from was blend mode normal, opacity 100%. That's the first thing I checked. The thing that I duplicated, like when I just duplicated it a minute ago, I duplicated just what we're looking at now, and it color shifted. I don't know. Let's see here. Doghouse is in the chat, and he says, is the layer you're copying is the layer you're copying from alpha locked? And said maybe the copy loses the alpha lock and makes it look like it's shifting. Well, actually, you know what though? Here's the thing. It was alpha locked. Well, you know what? There is a layer in here that is alpha locked. Because I'm copying the whole, it merged, and the wings. Let me un-alpha lock the wings. You may have broken the seal. You may have figured it out. The wings that are on a separate layer, and those are alpha locked. Let's see, Doghouse. Maybe you nailed it. You may have nailed it. Let's see here. All right. Let us copy all. Let me go above here and paste. Nope. Still color shifting. See, so that's all I'm doing. I am copying merged, and it's color shifting. And let me see, if I delete this and I just duplicate this layer, see, does it color shift if I just duplicate? That it doesn't do. So you know what? I'm just going to take this duplicate and cut out everything except for the head. I know, I wasted a ridiculous amount of time just messing with this color stuff. Fact of the matter is that all I need is just his head, because I want to have that as reference next to me while I'm repainting the values for the face. But it irritates me when a program is not doing what it's supposed to do. So I'm going to delete that. I'm going to go back and alpha lock the wings because I'm going to forget and then start painting on it later on and be like, oh. And now I'm just going to go into this layer and cut out everything I don't need. So no, I still don't know why it was that it was making the color shift. But since this solves the problem and it lets me get on with painting it, I'm going to just do this. Invert the selection, delete everything else. Now I've got a face that has the values of the original. And I can put this face next to the face that I'm going to repaint. And I can just eyedrop, color pick from it, look at it for reference as I work. And that was the reason why I also, grabbed this hand down here, because I'm just going to cut it down to the red base plus the orange and yellow highlights on here, recolor it to match that. So that's it. I just like to have my reference right there next to me while I'm repainting things. So Doghouse, the alpha lock thing was a really good suggestion. I don't know why it didn't work, but I appreciate it. I mean, you know what? You guys are the best viewers and subscribers ever. Because, as I'm working, you guys jump in. You're like, hey, man, try this, try that. Like, you're generally giving me helpful suggestions, and I appreciate that. Because you guys think of things that I might not think of. All right. So just so you know, we got about maybe 10 minutes left on the stream. At this point, it's going to be just me getting in here and doing some cleanup. And I'm wondering if I should go into the flat layer now that it's no longer alpha locked. And I should just, I can always go back and I've still got the unedited layer below. But I think I'm going to come in here and just start removing a little bit of the old head behind him. And I'll probably come back in here and fill this in with some hair. But again, a lot of this, there's going to be like fire spilling over his shoulder. Try not to get so lost in the details. In fact, I think I can go back to Alpha Lock on this for now. Alpha Lock is just good insurance to keep me from. Well, you know, let me undo that. It's just good insurance to keep me from painting on stuff I don't want to paint, yet not having to keep the layer just regular locked. Oh, my brush is a bit too large. I'm working a lot closer, a lot more zoomed in than I generally like, because I like to be farther out and keep more of that broader view of the figure as I go. All right. I mean, I'm going to come back in here and probably paint some yellow back in, but I'm going to do that after I finish his face. So let me alpha lock this bad boy. I think I'm just gonna, I'm so weird about this. I like to actually name my layers when I start getting a bunch of them. I've considered just working as far as I needed until I just can come back and merge all of this together. But I think instead it'll be more useful for me to keep the face separate and just make sure that I name it, so as I go through here, I can pick up different sections. And adjust them as I need. I'm just gonna put a little bit of this out. Just enough that the hair, the place where the head meets the brim of the hat is a little more, that line is a little more visible. All right, and now here's the real question is, do I want to alpha lock this before I go in and clean up the edges? Because I feel like the edges, when you zoom in like this, it doesn't feel like it makes much difference, but I feel like the edges of the face are not as crisp as they are in the rest of the drawing, because this original drawing was done in my layout template, which is large, but just not quite as large as the as this document that I'm working on now. Let's see. Amar says, it sounds, that sounds like it could be a copy and pasted image is not using the same settings of the program and maybe a setting relative to iPad. So maybe it's a settings issue related with the program. I've not copy pasted anything in Procreate. I rarely use the application, to be honest with you. Well, hey, you know, again, people are recommending Krita. They're recommending Clip Studio Paint. It might be worth it for me. Like I said, I'm going to be going through, once I'm done with Morningstar, I'm going to be going through a year of experimenting, finding my deadline style, just trying weird random artist experiments. In that arena, the idea of playing with a new application doesn't sound as crazy. Let's see. Byron says, actually, that would make sense if it's using the iPad's monitor settings instead of what the program's outputting. Amar said, I said with twice. You know what? I just completely deleted that mentally. If you did, I was just talking and did not even notice. Ah, Fry is in the chat and he says, "Yo, this looks sick. Thank you, man. Thank you." I'm definitely feel like this is a big improvement over what I was originally doing for the cover before. You know what? As I'm looking at this, I feel like this might be super janky, but I'm thinking about cutting off these ears and maybe just using the ears that are on the other one, even though they're out a little bit wider. I think I may actually like his wider ears. This is where I start getting to that area of nitpicking. So I am totally in like nitpicking mode now, and it's like, just get on with it. But let me erase these ears. Then come back and copy the other ears and paste it in. Nitpicky, nitpicky. Because I mean, as you can see here, I don't know how good the comparison is on the live stream versus how crisply it's showing what's on my monitor. But for me, looking at this, the face from a slightly lower resolution file to me looks significantly blurrier than the ear in this close-up. Like to me, even though it's just an ear and it's more shapes than it is actual line art, that the place where the edges of the shapes meet looks far more crisp in this ear that's on the left side of the figure. So that's part of going back and repainting the face, and it's not just fixing the values, but bringing it kind of up-resing it through redrawing it. And that's where I wonder if I should come in and just redraw the actual outline of the face, like maybe it could do with a little bit of crisping up. But let's start with getting this ear. Here. Yeah, selections are tedious no matter what software you're doing. And I realized I forgot that I have the upper part of the ear. I may have to adjust the values of this because this is supposed to be sort of the top of the ear, but it's more in shadow because of the bright underlighting. But I don't think it's reading that way. It's just reading like the ear ends there. And if it is reading wrong, much like if it looks right, it is right. If it reads wrong, then it is wrong. So I may need to come back in and fix that. Copy, paste, move over, flip horizontal. Oops, I don't want to undo. I want to rotate. Rotate a little bit more. Because now he's got more of a straight on view. And if it was a little bit to the left or right, I would just squish this. Or rather scale it to make it a little skinnier. That's what I mean when I say squish. But yeah, that, deselect, zoom out. And yeah, he's got bigger ears now, but those bigger ears seem to fit the head and the face and the pose. So That works for me. Now here's the question. Can I pinch two layers together if one is alpha locked and the other is not? Yes, I can, and it maintains the alpha lock. Yeah, that works. So I just go back in here to the face. There's a little bit that I missed when I was cutting out the other ear. Let's just, I was talking about cleaning up the edges. To be honest, I can clean up the edges just by going in here with the erase tool. And that's another thing. Sometimes we get so caught up in being additive, drawing and adding, I forget that I can fix things by just cutting away. Instead of coming in here and trying to add to this to make it crisper, I can just come in here and this edge by going across it with the eraser, but it's being erased at the new resolution of this file as opposed to being erased at a lower resolution. And that will crisp this guy up. You just, whoops, that's a little much. So giving him a little digital shave. Let's see here. Hop back to the chat. See, Amar says, I'm looking into NFTs as well. Been researching how I can set that up. They seem very promising for comic book artists, especially. Dude, shoot me a message, either on the Discord server, wherever it's easiest for you to shoot me a message. I have not been able to. I've been finding a lot of contradictory information about NFTs, and I have not found a really good resource. In order to understand, I understand the technical aspects of it is a blockchain-backed piece of unique digital artwork, and you can also include smart contracts that allow for options like the individual artist to be compensated every time the piece is resold. You can add all kinds of anything you could put in a contract, you can put into a digital smart contract. So you can add all kinds of stipulations about the artwork, but basically making a piece of digital art that has a certificate of authenticity to it built in, and that you really is unique in that aspect. But I'd be curious if you can point me to some of the resources that you find that are actually explaining some of the best practices. Because from what I've seen, once you understand, okay, it's just a matter of minting whatever the fee is for minting a digital piece. Beyond that, it just sounds like unless you already have a base of collectors that, you're just trying to get your art in front of people who already are purchasing digital art. You're just trying to market to a fan base that you don't necessarily have yet. I'm making digital art now. I'm not anti NFTs. I think that I just don't know enough about it. And my hands are so full with the actual act of making art day to day that I haven't been able to explore the benefits of diving into that realm and figuring out how much time it would take for me to actually prepare assets and what the assets are. Because to be honest, if I were going to do them, what I'd like to do is just be able to just do sketches and digital pieces like I already make. And well, not even that, but I'd really like to make, I guess, digital versions of the type of things that I'm, like let's say I'm doing traditional figure studies. I'd like to be able to just take those studies, do them, maybe scan them in and make NFTs of them. So I'm even making digital versions of traditional art. All the while I'm talking about moving into making comics digitally. So it's nuts. It's all over the place. I guess I need to figure out where I would fit into that space. But going back down, let's see. Fry says, I missed some streams, but this this POG, did you do it with color from the start, or did you sketch it in grayscale and color afterwards? That is a longer question. I'm going to answer it, but let me run through some of the other comments, Fry, and then come back to it. Amar says, Concrete Jungle has jumped fully in for it. I've seen Erica Alexander and her husband on Clubhouse promoting them, talking about them. So I'll check both of those. Thank you for those references. Let me write that down. And I'm on I have Clubhouse. I'm on it. I never go in and listen to anything. I'm too busy listening to podcasts that I already have on. I probably should start taking advantage of the fact that I'm on there and hearing a lot of the good resources. But it's just one of those things where it becomes yet another social media for me to keep up with. And between other YouTube channels I watch, podcasts I listen to, and actually reading actual, physical or digital books, it's hard for me to keep up with all of it. But I hear there's a lot of information on Clubhouse. It's a good information sharing platform. So I should get into that, particularly because I listen to so many podcasts anyway. Let's see here. Fry says he likes the expression. Byron says, yeah, I see what you mean. Amar says, while it's still new, if it takes off and becomes popular as Bitcoin, then it's better to find out and get in now before it becomes oversaturated, because now the entertainers and billionaires have gotten into cryptocurrency and NFT space. They'll even have a coin that gains value based on your social influence called BitClout. Jesus Christ. He says, so as an alternate to Patreon or something, now you can have fans. I guess you said you can now have fans buy your BitClout coin and NFT artist collections. That could be a series of prints or comic, or better, add some motion sounds and graphics, making it a motion comic. A lot to chew on there. I use Clubhouse. That is where artists hang out. That create and buy NFTs. It does not have to be digital. You can take photos of traditional art as well. All right, that's good to know. I may have to have you on. I'll tell you this, Amar. When you feel, if and when there's a point where you feel comfortable to say, all right, I have learned a lot about NFTs. This is what I have learned and what I would like to share with the non-NFT masses who just don't know much about it. I would love to have you on for an episode just to talk about that. That's if it's something you'd be interested in doing, and when you are at a point where you both feel like you have the bandwidth for it and feel like, okay, I've got a handle on this, that I could say, here's what I know. Because again, like even Trevor was mentioning when I was having problems with Procreate, that you are like the digital you're the tech go-to guy. Like in terms of like all the people that I talk to on the regular, like you have a very broad, you have a range of knowledge of technology that's both broad and deep, and that is rare. So I appreciate that. Let's see. You say, it appears for me to be 100% about the branding and building a community around the NFT art that you create. All right. Well, that's kind of what I imagine for that it would be, is just, in everything. It's like crowdfunding, whether it's Patreon or Kickstarter. Everything that everyone tells me is, you have to build the audience. That's what makes you successful. It's not being on the platform. It's making artwork that connects with people, and then sharing that art, and then having those people say, I want to support you, and then providing a place for them to give you that support, whether it's a Kickstarter campaign, a Patreon campaign, NFTs, what have you. That is what I have seen and heard and been told by others that are more successful than I am. And, it's kind of what I'm trying to do here. So Fry, back to your question in terms of, did I do all this, digital or sketch it out? This is going to be the last thing after I answer this question. I'm going to wrap it up. And this question may take me a few minutes because I'm trying to think of the quickest way. It may just be a really quick answer. You know what? Honestly, the simplest answer, if I turn this off and turn this on. So what I did was I did a color digital thumbnail, and that's what's up here in a smaller corner. I think I should actually flip back over and show you. Let me go back to my layouts folder. Okay, so this was the previous cover to the comic book that I was working on, with the framing and the branding. And I was just coming in here, and I was digitally painting it in a process similar to what we're looking at now. But I was dissatisfied with the piece, and I could not understand why I was dissatisfied with it. I know now if I create a layer on top of this, and I fill this with black, and I change the color mode to color, it does the same effect as putting a black and white filter on it. And I was able to see once I did this, the big problem with this piece was contrast. And if I had properly put in more contrast when I had started, then I think I may have even finished this early version. But this was the first version of the cover that I had worked on, and it just wasn't working for me. I put it aside months ago and finished gray toning the whole issue. Now that the issue is done with the gray toning, I said, all right, I got to come back and finish this cover. And also, just so you can see, before I even started with doing the digital thumbnails, this piece that you're looking at here, this is a very small watercolor thumbnail. Like this actual sketch that you're looking at, it's blown up large on screen, but this was really maybe like a 2-inch tall watercolor painting. And it was a series of like 5 or 6 different watercolor paintings I did, trying to figure out what I want to do with the color. And if I scale this down, it doesn't, blown up, it looks like kind of a garbled mess of like whiteout and watercolor. But when you scale it down, that's the whole point. Is I try to figure out how to make pieces. That's the point of thumbnails, is making them so that if they read small, you can kind of, that's the graphic impact you want to have when it's large. So it was just the fact that, what you ended up seeing here of having the main character Lucifer on fire, and just his arm is on fire holding the gun, and he's like, pointing it, towards the viewer. And it's just like him being consumed at the end. I never did work in the cool blues of the sky behind. I have to decide if I want to try that on the cover, see how that looks. I may come back to that. And, I'd forgotten about that. I may come back and toss that in at the end. But anyway, so this is where I was when I said I'm not happy with this piece and set it aside. When I came back to revisit it, I brought in that color piece. I tried doing the thing where I tried doing hue saturation and just desaturating the cover. So this piece that's in the middle is the same cover, but I just came in and started painting him. And the end, it just, instead of giving contrast, it just looks like I'm putting him in blackface. It did not come out well. And so then I just, took a yellow square with the logo, and then just made a digital thumbnail. And the goal here was saying, all right, try to work out the contrast. Now I had like a whole layer where I could, that little trick I showed you with putting the black layer, but putting it in color mode, I was just flipping back and forth. So as I was coloring it, I was checking my values. And now, as you can see, I go from the first sketch that has, the original piece that has very low contrast, so it doesn't read well, to a piece that has more contrast but I don't feel as well executed, to the final one, which, mentioning that this looks like some very pop art looking shit. Yeah, I wanted it to be stronger and have a lot more contrast. I didn't necessarily know if I was going to stick with it being hard edged or whether I was going to go in with like softer edges and more painterly. But the point was, I wanted the contrast to read. And so I would basically sketched this final version while going back and forth in terms of a color. And then once I was happy with this thumbnail that I have here, mind you, I just stopped myself from getting into drawing too much detail, because this is just for me to work out the thumbnail. Then I flipped back over to the piece, the file that we're in now. And somewhere in this file, okay, well, this tiny thumbnail that I have up here, the one that I was happy with, that's in the upper right-hand corner, what I started with was, if I turn off everything else, I started with this thumbnail, and I brought the thumbnail in to take up the whole screen and put it at a low opacity, and I drew a new sketch over that thumbnail. And this is that sketch. And based on this sketch, then I went in and drew what I would consider flat art. And it was really just me getting the silhouette of the character and having that sketch at low opacity and drawing in the general details of the figure, you know, separating the shirt from the coat, the face from the neckerchief, you know, the hat, the gun, blocking out the general pieces. And so this is where I was when, at the start of the stream, I was telling you that I was talking with my buddy Carl Altsler last night, and we went back and forth in terms of looking at the original drawing that I did, and he was like, hey man, why don't you try bringing in the guns and the face from the first one, because he really liked this coming right at the viewer. And I gave it a shot, and I think it works. I like it. And that leads us to where we're at now, which is just me coming in, and now I'm going to repaint the face, and I'm going to repaint one of the guns, one of the arms, and then just duplicate it and position it. So I'm just going to repaint them so that they have the same value and contrast as the rest of this figure that I'm much happier with. And then I'm going to, you know, fill the background with yellow, paint in white flames around the edges, and we'll call it a day. So that's still probably a few more hours worth of work, but yeah, that's how we got to where we're at now. Last couple of comments. Let's see here. Yeah, Amar says, it appears to me to be 100% all about the branding and building a community around that NFT art you create. I would be down once I have minted and sold my first NFT. I'm working to figure out what art collection to create for the rest of the year. Yeah, well, you know, I've had you on before. For people who are new to the channel, Amar is a regular, not just commenter on the in the chat, but a regular guest on the a return guest, multiple time guest on the channel. Sometimes just talking process, sometimes talking technical stuff. We kind of leave it open and loose and ramble. But I think, considering how much NFTs have taken the art world by storm over the past few months, yeah, if there's a point somewhere down the road, you know, few months, few weeks, whenever you want to, definitely hit me up, and I'd love to have you back again specifically to talk about that, because it would be an education for me. It's nice to have people on that can teach me stuff. I try to share the things that I know, and it's nice to bring someone on who can teach not just me, but the rest of our audience. So I appreciate that. Fry says, I got you. Still a sick cover. Thank you so much. I'm glad you like it. I hope that the walkthrough of how I ended up from my original sketch to this, while it was long-winded, like most of the things I say, I hope that it was at least educational, if not entertaining, hopefully both. So on that note, let us jump back here, and I will tell all of you that I don't say it enough. If you like these videos and you're not subscribed to the channel, subscribe. If you're subscribed, if you hit the share button, share it on Twitter, share it on Facebook, share it on I don't know if you can share this on Instagram. Instagram doesn't have outgoing links. You know what? If there's somebody else you think that's into art also and would enjoy this, share it with them. Just share it with some folks you think would like it. Also, there's a link in the description, at least there should be, for my my affiliate shop on Amazon, where I've got art tools and art books that I use and recommend. You can check that out. It's another way to support the channel. But most importantly, if you would like to get a bonus live stream once to twice a month. So it's almost double the content that you're getting here in the weekly live streams. You go to patreon.com/Jeremy. It's patreon.com/GERIMI. Past few months, we've been doing a series called Art Book Study Group. I take some of the best art books out there and do deep dive studies page by page. And it is me showing you how I personally am working to improve my craft. Mostly on this live stream, we're sharing me making things. The Art Book Study Group is me learning things and sharing that learning with you, along with getting to read my comics on there already and seeing even more behind the scenes process than we see here. So patreon.com/GERIMI. You can go to newsletter.jeremy.net. There I've got a monthly newsletter that I send out. Has some work in progress animated GIFs, links to some of these live streams if you happen to miss them, links to the replays, and some blog posts. So the best of my my posts that I share on social media, all that delivered to your inbox once a month. Newsletter.jeremy.net. And again, my comic books, Eye of the Gods, a self-contained done-in-one graphic novel, psychological thriller about a man who's cursed with visions he cannot control. My current series, Morning Star, Lucifer's Fall from Heaven, told as a Western. This book has issues 1 through 4. I am working on the cover for issue 8, the final issue, the conclusion of the series right now. You can get those at amazon.jeremy.net. If you're someone who lives outside of the U.S. and shipping costs are expensive, it's available on Amazon Kindle. It's available on Comixology to read digitally. It's also available on the Crypto Comics platform. Definitely check that out as well. And yeah, so that's it, guys. Again, I thank you for spending time with me. I decided, I'm glad I decided to go a little bit long because I was feeling it. A lot of great conversation and, hanging out. Thanks, Fry. Thanks, Amar. Trevor, thanks for coming in. Don't know if you're still on there, but dude, thanks for hanging out too. All the great comments. Everybody who's here, I appreciate it. And if you're watching later, please, like, subscribe, share, and I appreciate it. That's it for now. Go be creative.